Okay, so let's kick things off with something that might seem a bit, well, counterintuitive.
Uh,
This idea that narcissism, the thing we usually think of as purely negative,
yeah, definitely has that reputation.
that maybe some of those traits could actually have perceived benefits.
Ah, right. The flip side.
Exactly. Welcome, everyone, to the deep dive. We're here to sift through the sources and bring you the insights that count.
And today, we're diving into narcissism,
Hmm.
looking at um, both sides of the coin, the potential upsides, and the very real, very significant downsides.
We've got a range of material articles talking pros and cons, some psychological takes on leadership, even a more, let's say, provocative viewpoint.
It's interesting because, yeah, some sources do suggest certain traits in certain contexts might look like an advantage at first glance.
Right. So if you've heard the term narcissism thrown around and who hasn't, our goal today is to get a bit more nuanced.
To move beyond just the label, really.
Yeah, exactly. We want to pull out the key ideas from everything we've looked at, get a clearer picture of what's going on without, getting bogged down in jargon.
So, unpacking the complexity.
That's the plan. Let's start with those perceived upsides, the things that might make someone with these traits seem successful, at least initially.
Okay. Well, one thing that pops up across a few sources is this really high self-confidence.
Like unusually high.
Yeah, almost an unshakable belief in their own abilities sometimes. Well, sometimes it doesn't quite match reality.
Right. It's not just normal confidence, it's this deep-seated feeling of being exceptional.
And that, strangely enough, can make them take risks others wouldn't dare.
You see that sometimes, don't you? Someone who's just so sure they'll succeed against all odds.
Mm-hmm. And that intense self-belief often fuels a massive amount of drive and ambition.
Ah, the desire for admiration. That makes sense.
Totally. It becomes this powerful motivator, pushing them hard in their careers, other parts of life.
And that ambition, paired with those really strong convictions, it probably makes them seem decisive.
Exactly. Very decisive, which, in leadership roles or high-pressure situations can look like a real plus.
People might see that unwavering certainty and think, okay, this person knows what they're doing.
Right. Interpreting it as competence.
And what about charm? I feel like that sometimes comes up.
Oh, definitely. Some individuals with these traits can be incredibly charismatic, really
So,
persuasive.
like, they just know how to present
Yeah, they have
themselves.
a knack for it. Navigating social stuff,
Yeah.
influencing people. One source even mentioned they can initially make themselves seem better than they really are.
That initial charm factor.
Uh,
Okay.
And there's also this idea of a kind of surface level resilience to criticism.
Surface level.
Yeah.
So, not deep down.
Probably not,
Yeah.
no. Their self-esteem might actually be quite fragile underneath. But they often project this image of being totally unfazed by negative feedback.
Which, again, people might see as strength. Like
Yeah.
they have thick skin.
Exactly. It's like an outward shield.
And that focus, that self-importance must translate into being really focused on their goals.
Absolutely. Laser focus sometimes. Achieving those goals reinforces that inflated self-image, so it's a powerful drive. Relentless pursuit.
And in leadership,
Yeah.
you mentioned potential benefits there, short-term ones.
Yeah, short term is the key phrase. A leader like this might push for really big, maybe even audacious goals.
Take bigger risks.
Take bigger risks, yeah. And in a crisis, that decisiveness, that willingness to act boldly, it could seem helpful in the moment.
So, okay, on the surface, super confident, driven, decisive, maybe charming. Sounds almost good.
Almost. But as we both know, and as the sources make very clear, there's a massive downside.
Right. Let's pivot to that because the negatives seem pretty overwhelming compared to these sort of fleeting positives.
They really are. And the first big one is relationships, interpersonal difficulty.
The lack of empathy, I assume.
Fundamentally, yes.
Yeah.
It makes it incredibly hard for them to form genuinely healthy connections. They struggle to grasp or even acknowledge other people's feelings.
Leading to.
Shallow relationships, lots of conflict. It's hard to connect deeply with someone who can't really see things from your perspective.
That makes total sense. And you mentioned fragility earlier, despite the confident exterior.
Hmm. That outward confidence masks a real sensitivity to criticism.
So negative feedback doesn't roll off their back.
Not really.
Mm-hmm.
Even small things can feel like a huge personal attack. They might react with anger, get really defensive, or just shut down completely.
And does that fragility link to entitlement, that sense of deserving special treatment?
Very often, yes.
Yeah.
They genuinely believe they're superior, so they expect exceptions to be made for them. Special treatment is just expected.
Which can lead to using people
Absolutely. Exploitative behavior isn't uncommon. They might manipulate or use others to get what they want without much thought for the impact on those people.
And accountability, taking responsibility.
That's a major challenge. It's almost always someone else's fault. Deflecting blame is standard practice.
It's never them.
Rarely, if
Yeah.
ever. Then there's the grandiosity.
Ah, the inflated view of themselves.
Exactly. An unrealistic assessment of their own importance, their abilities, their achievements. They tend to exaggerate a lot.
Which must get old for people around them.
It definitely can.
Yeah.
And underlying all this seems to be this bottomless need for admiration.
Constant validation.
Constant. Like they need praise and attention just to feel okay.
Yeah.
Without it, they can feel empty or even enraged. It's like they need others to constantly mirror back how great they are.
That sounds exhausting for everyone involved.
It is. And it makes real intimacy incredibly difficult.
Because of the fear of being seen as flawed.
Precisely. Vulnerability is terrifying when you need to maintain this perfect image. So being truly open and honest in a close relationship, very, very hard.
And internally, is it all calm despite the outward show?
Not necessarily. Emotional dysregulation can be part of the picture. Intense, volatile emotions, especially if their ego or status feels threatened.
And all these behaviors, they must push people away eventually.
Often, yes. It leads to social isolation over time. People get tired of the self-centeredness, the drama, the lack of genuine connection.
Are there links to other mental health issues?
There are. Higher rates of depression, anxiety, sometimes substance use issues can co-occur. It's a difficult internal landscape.
And circling back to leadership, we said short-term benefits, but long-term.
Long-term, it's usually detrimental. Leaders with strong narcissistic traits often undermine their teams.
How so?
They might underestimate their followers, ignore valuable advice, silence anyone who disagrees, basically prioritize their own ego over the organization's actual health or success.
And ethical concerns come into play too, right?
Big time. Prioritizing personal gain over morals, manipulation, exploitation. That lack of empathy can lead down some pretty dark paths ethically.
Okay, so it's a complex picture, but the downsides seem really profound and damaging. If someone maybe recognizes these tendencies in themselves or gets feedback, what can they actually do?
Well, change is definitely possible, but it takes real commitment. One source lays out some practical strategies.
Like what?
First and foremost, actively practicing empathy. Like making a conscious, deliberate effort to consider other people's feelings and perspectives.
How do you practice that?
By asking clarifying questions, really listening to the answers, trying to understand where someone else is coming from, even if you don't agree.
So shifting the focus outwards intentionally.
Exactly. And cultivating genuine curiosity about others. Showing sincere interest in their lives, valuing what they have to say.
Not just waiting for your turn to talk.
Right. Which ties into active listening. Fully focusing on the speaker, not interrupting, not mentally preparing your rebuttal while they're still talking, just hearing them.
That sounds simple, but it's probably harder than it looks.
It really is. Another tough one is seeking feedback.
Ooh, given the sensitivity to criticism.
Exactly. But asking trusted people for honest feedback and really trying to receive it without getting defensive. Seeing it as data for growth.
Okay. What else?
Learning to share the spotlight. Being mindful of dominating conversations. Making space for others. And actually celebrating their successes. Genuinely.
And maybe tempering those grand expectations of oneself.
Yes, developing more realistic expectations. Recognizing you aren't always the best, the smartest, the most knowledgeable, and that's okay.
Gratitude practice comes up a lot these days, too. Does that help?
It seems to. Focusing on positives, acknowledging others' contributions, it can help counter that excessive self-focus.
And managing criticism differently, instead of reacting defensively.
Trying to reframe it.
Yeah.
Seeing it as potentially useful information, a chance to learn, rather than just a personal attack.
Building healthier relationships, too, I guess.
Absolutely. Moving towards interdependence relationships based on mutual respect, shared support, give and take.
And professional help.
Definitely recommended. Therapy can be hugely beneficial for exploring the roots of these patterns and learning healthier skills, but it takes time, effort, and real willingness.
It sounds like a path, but a challenging one. Now, there was that other source, the one with the more provocative take.
Ah, yes. The benefits of being a narcissist, exposing the narcissist. Quite a title.
It is. What was the core idea there?
Well, it basically argues that, yeah, people with these traits can be very successful politicians, CEOs, etc.
And it attributes this to?
That's what it calls the gift of gab. This ability to speak confidently, persuasively, influence others.
Okay, similar to the charisma point we discussed.
Similar, but this source gives it a much darker spin. It suggests this gift comes from a manipulative place.
How so?
It claims it's used for personal gain through manipulation, lying, even stirring up trouble between people.
Wow. So not a real gift then?
Not according to this perspective, no. It argues that any success they achieve is just a temporal reward, meaning it's superficial, temporary, and comes at a huge internal cost. They're losing something essential, their integrity maybe, even if they look successful on the outside.
And the warning was pretty stark, wasn't it?
Very, essentially. Don't envy these people. Their glittering success might hide a really high, unseen price. Not everything that glitters is gold.
Right. A strong caution against just looking at the surface.
It really drives home those ethical concerns again. Even if some traits offer worldly advantages, the methods and the ultimate cost are deeply problematic from this viewpoint.
So, wrapping this up, it's been quite a journey through this topic. We've seen how certain traits, confidence, drive, might look like benefits, maybe even offer short-term edges, especially in things like leadership.
But then we hit the major downsides. The lack of empathy, the relationship chaos, the entitlement, the ethical pitfalls, which often create huge problems personally and for others.
It seems like healthy self-belief is one thing, but the distorted self-perception and lack of empathy at the core of narcissism are where things really go wrong.
Definitely. Which leads to a question for you, listening. Where do you draw the line?
Yeah, what's the crucial difference for you between healthy confidence and harmful narcissism? How do we nurture the first without slipping into the second in ourselves or others?
Or maybe think about it this way. If some of these traits do offer advantages in certain situations, what are the ethical boundaries that absolutely should not be crossed chasing success?
Lots to chew on there. We hope this deep dive gave you some useful perspectives and maybe sparked some reflection on your own experiences with self-belief, empathy, and the complex ways they play out in the world.